Hello. Thanks for tuning in to Manfred Crane. This episode is brought to you by the Cerebral Cortex, a subsidiary of Imagination Manfred Crane Portal Productions. Travel with me today back into the old times, the Old Testament times, times when religion is not about going to Mass, getting dressed up, and casually going with your family into a nice air conditioned or hopefully warmed building, listening to a couple soft sung hymns, receiving a small piece of bread, shaking each other's hands in peace, and caring about your daily business. No, in the old times it was much more about guzzling wine into a massive orgy where there's not just one god but several gods, all of which fight amongst each other and hope and pray that you enjoy the same fruitful orgies, harvests, and bloodletting that would entitle an ancient ritual ceremony. But then imagine if we were in this time and a man came to you and said that there is only one deity, there is only one supreme force, there is only one God. Yahweh is a man of war. Yahweh is his name. That's what Exodus chapter 15 tells you. And it comes very much as appropriate now, keeping in lieu with the Christian Bale movie that's coming up. The story of Moses, right? And the story of a liberator, a story of the classical freedom fighter, right? But of course, unlike Spartacus, unlike Harriet Tubman, unlike people of the independence, unlike any other story you could think of, Michael Collins and such, Moses has divine help. He's almost a superhero. And why? Well, because his buddy is Yahweh. And let me tell you a little something about Yahweh. Yahweh does not mess around. Okay, like I've said, Yahweh is a man of war. Yahweh is his name. And so when we look about the Old Testament, right, and it's very interesting on how the narrative of the Old Testament flows into the New Testament, and it's all combined into one book. And the package deal that all us Catholic schoolboys and girls have been taught is that it's a singular narrative. But anyone who's read it knows that it's a very different flow of concepts and ideals and character development, really. And mainly with its opening. Its opening is about Yahweh, a god, an old school mythological warrior god king that persists throughout the Old Testament narrative, right? He demands worship, he punishes those who go against him, he wipes entire cities off the map, and in one time, he destroys the world, right? The great flood story. I mean, that's Yahweh pretty pissed off, you know. So, all right, fast forward several dozen generations, supposedly thousands of years now after that flood. And these descendants, these chosen people, the people that Yahweh had created in his own image in the garden, but then, disobeyed him and he had to kick them out. They're stranded in the land of Egypt. Now, if we just freeze frame and pull out of the biblical narrative for a moment, we can switch over to what some historical scholars would say that this represents what was maybe not the first wave of Hyksos invasions during the first intermediate period, but somewhere along the lines of the mass migrations of generational Canaanites moving into the Nile Delta at around this time, which by the time of the New Kingdom had turned into quite a significant populace that also had brought its own customs, their own language, their own religion, and were skilled in the arts of war and were often fought as mercenaries in the Pharaoh's army. But when Moses comes along, they're slaves, they're screwed, they're crying out to a deity to help them, to make them strong. And so Moses rallies them. Moses is chosen. He's the Jewish Spartacus. Save the Hebrews. But aside from Moses, there is Yahweh, the revolutionary new concept, right? Above all and beyond, Yahweh is the one, only true God, right? He's the Almighty Lord General leading and protecting his peoples into their destiny, the promised land, the land of milk and honey. In Exodus, as we'll hopefully see, beautifully and just epically kick ass, blown shit your pants, cool movie, Exodus with Ridley Scott coming up, the new portrayals of Yahweh just battling and protecting his people against Pharaoh's pursuing chariots and splitting the Red Sea, raining down fireballs, locusts, frogs, plagues, all kinds of just, throwing lightning bolts right up Ramses' ass. It'll be good stuff. But that's who Yahweh is, right? That's what separates him from all the other deities out there. Not only is he the one, the true deity, but because of that, that is his great strength. He's not locked in some eternal cosmic battle with other deities, who are his brothers and his half sisters and his degenerate family of cosmic rulers. No, Yahweh sits up there alone in the clouds with all the power in the universe behind him, protecting his people. He sends them heroes, right? He'll continue to do this. He sends them Moses and Joshua, and the great judges come, Samson and Gideon. And these people battle their way through all the way back to their native homeland, the land of Abraham, the land of their forefathers, and they retake it and establish the kingdom of Israel. Now, this thread runs all through the Old Testament, right? And back and forth, people disobey Yahweh. Yahweh doesn't have any cosmic battles with his brothers and sisters. He's the Almighty Father, and his relationship is with his people. But like that, there's always a parent-child relationship that happens with Yahweh. He's like the great all-seeing monarch without mercy, but sometimes can show compassion. He's a God King, sits up in the heavens and gives supernatural powers to the armies of men. And so, our opening quote, Exodus chapter 15, Yahweh is a man of war and Yahweh is his name, is a battle cry. It's a chant, it's a rally that Moses uses in one of the most extraordinary and, at least in the Western tradition, remarkable episodes of slave revolts, successful slave revolts, certainly in the ancient world, and serves as the basis of Judo-Christian theology. In fact, even in Islam culture, Moses is revered as a prophet. And so, that's the greatest battle cry ever, is it not? The fact that, how can you defeat me and my army? We're superheroes. It's an army of Avengers. Yahweh protects us, you idiot. What are you doing? You going to join us? Or are you going to sit there and get slaughtered? It's divine will. And it's used time and time and again. Then we flip forward. Use your thumb now and scroll a couple good 100 pages. In the same book, talking about the same God, And let's read Matthew 26. For then Jesus said to him, put your sword back into its sheath, for all who take up the sword will perish by the sword. And so here, and that message is one of the very good crux of Christianity, and that is passive nonviolence. Here, now, if we want to maintain the same narrative that we've been reading all the way back in Exodus, we have Yahweh, our great God of war, the ruthless, destructive God King, decides that it's time to visit Earth in the flesh. And so he manifests himself by impregnating a virgin and becomes incarnate with the body and the man known as Jesus of Nazareth. But this is a totally different Yahweh. This is a totally different God. This is a totally different ballgame entirely. Or it's a pacifist philosophy. Even in the face of persecution, if you're attacked, turn the other cheek. If you're enslaved, beg for mercy upon your masters. Don't rise up. Never draw the sword. And if anything, do unto those as you would do unto yourself. In that story, that quote, where Jesus tells his followers to put their swords away and that if anyone lives by the sword, they will die by the sword, is just an unbelievable paradox in this single narrative that we have called the Holy Bible. That it's very interesting that Christianity would also use the same rhetoric, and rightfully so, out of the same book, to invoke war battle cries such as Yahweh is a man of war, with the almost equal Christian term Deus Vult, which is the God wills it chant of crusading knights in the Middle Ages, right before they decapitate several hundred people. They would, well, at least justify it through the fact that God wanted it, because, well, they don't believe that this Yahweh, God of war, reincarnated himself into the man Jesus of Nazareth, becoming the Christ figure. But you gotta love Christ. How can you not? He's a simple man. He declares peace amongst everyone. He'd never heard a fly, right? Christ is very Eastern Buddhic sense, really, to him, doesn't he? It's like Yahweh kind of read a few more magazines on popular deities and said, you know what? We're going to do a remake this season. I'm going to go down to earth and visit the new model, Jesus. And that's all about peace. Right? So there's a common thread, though. I think this is a lot of old news. You know, Yahweh's a man of war. The Old Testament is full of violence. Jesus is a man of peace. And the New Testament is full of goodies. But if we flip back now, and we finish with these, Genesis 12, quote, Yahweh said to Abraham, go forth from your native land and from your father's home to a land that I will show you. I will make for you a great nation, bless you, and make great your name, for that is my blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and curse those who curse you. And all the communities of the earth shall find blessing in you. End quote. Flip through now. Scroll all the way back. Remember, same book. To Mark chapter 16. Quote, and he said to them, go into all the world and proclaim the good news to the whole of creation, and the ones who believe it and are baptized will be saved, but the ones who do not believe it will be condemned. And so maybe the narrative makes sense, doesn't it? It's really all just about believe this book, this is the right book, and it's a great publicity thing, right? As far as the narrative of the religion goes. And so the concepts of Yahweh and Jesus blend there with a shared concern with popularity. For regardless of being a protector of Israel or a sacrificial lamb of all mankind, they both preach conversion to their faith, and accepting of such faith is the only true path to salvation. Interesting. For there is no tolerance for unbelievers, and those who are punished on earth by Yahweh, condemned in the wrath of eternal torment and fire, are likewise damned in the afterlife by Jesus and his Father and the Holy Spirit and all the saints, who will cast you from the gates of heaven into a fiery abyss where the devil sticks red hot pokers in ungentle places. So it comes at the very end of the gospel, it comes as an instruction to his disciples, where Jesus kind of, as he's floating away, winks at them and reminds them, although it's all about peace and love, you better not worship any other deities now, or I'll come back to get you. So, as where Yahweh is only concerned with Israel, he's more of kind of, your wrath comes now. Yahweh likes to kick over the Lego blocks right when he's frustrated. Where Jesus says, it's okay, it's okay. You can play with all your tools, you can play with all your toys, but secretly, I'll be waiting for you. And so, yeah, don't mean to frighten any kiddies out there. It's all fun and games. Thanks for tuning in to this portal here. And I mean no offense to anyone. This is completely neutral. There are no bias on Manfred Crane. We're all friends here. In fact, we're going to follow a little more of the Jesus route and preach acceptance, community, love, and peace. Thanks for tuning in. Of course, if you like what you hear, if you don't like what you hear, if you're just trying to communicate, don't forget manfredcrane@gmail.com. Always tune in to the Manfred_crane on Instagram. Tons of visual portals, mainly the visual archives that can get up there. There's also Twitter @Manfred Crane. That'll just keep you updated on if there's a new episode or if there's any topics come along. This Exodus episode only seemed fair because obviously next week, with millions of others, I will certainly be checking out the new Christian Bale Ridley Scott movie. It's going to be kablamos. It's going to be kablamos. I advise everyone to freshen up and get out there, especially if it's a nice rainy day and it's perfect for a little movie portal. So thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed listening. Like I said, I'm no religious scholar, and I'm certainly not a priest, nor is there any affiliation with any really religious belief other than the fact that freedom is belief, and you have the right to believe whatever you want. So keep that in mind. Talk to Grant Hancock about the freedom of consciousness. He's a pretty cool cat, and seems like a nice chap. So thanks for tuning in. New episodes coming up soon. Take care now. Bye bye then.